Do the live stream at the top. You're good to go now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, welcome to the meeting of the Committee and Infrastructure Services Committee. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise physical distancing, City Hall is open for select services. Members of the public are invited to participate in this meeting electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video. That's at kitchener.ca/watchnow. And while in-person delegation requests are not feasible at this time, members of the public are invited to submit written comments or participate electronically in the meeting by contacting Diana Saunderson, Committee Administrator, at diana.saunderson@kitchener.ca. That's Diana with two N's, diana.saunderson@kitchener.ca. Delegates must register by 1 p.m. on November 2nd in order to participate electronically. Written comments will be circulated prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. Okay, we have two consent items for Kitchener Growth Management Strategy, the annual monitoring report, and the all-way stop and control Thomas Lee Drive and South Creek Drive. Anyone have any questions that we'd like to? Okay, Councillor Johnson. So it's move that we move these out of consent. Item 1 out of consent.
Sorry, Councillor Schneider, I was going to move them. I don't have a question.
Oh, move them. Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
good. Okay. Well, if they've been moved, if there are there any questions at all? Okay. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
It's not a question. I just want to make note in the report that the always stop control says it's in Ward 5, but it's actually in Ward 4. So just wanted to make that note.
Perfect. Okay, that's good. So then all in favor of this? We're all good? Awesome. Okay, great. We have no delegations, so we'll move on to discussion item. It's item number 3, INS 20-017, the Kitchener Urban Forest Canopy Update. And David Schmidt will join us, our Environmental Urban Forest Project Manager, with a PowerPoint presentation on this matter and responding to any questions that committee might have.
Good afternoon, Councillor Schneider, Chair Schneider. You did my job for me, so without further ado, I will hand it straight over to Dave.
Great.
All right, thank you very much. If we could start the presentation, we just have a brief, about a 5-minute presentation just to provide you with an introduction to the work we've done so far in terms of Kitchener's tree canopy and the setting of a target. If I could have the next slide, please. In terms of the direction for setting a tree target, we have direction from Kitchener's strategic plan, which identified the desire to have a target set. It's interesting to note that that plan puts a strong emphasis on the United Nations sustainability goals, and a sister organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization within the United Nations, identified 9 of those 17 sustainable urban development goals specifically related to urban forestry. There's also direction from the Kitchener's Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy, which Council recently approved. If I could have the next slide, please. When we talk about a tree canopy target, what we're talking about is setting a target or a goal to achieve and then maintain a desired degree of tree cover based on goals set for the entire municipality and each neighborhood or land use. Typically, when we talk about increasing the canopy, we're also looking at seeing an increase in the benefits that trees provide. During the strategy, we made a strong discussion and emphasis on the 10 ways that trees help us, and that's just identifies some of the ways that trees help us. Next slide, please. In terms of some key terms just to understand as we talk about this, existing tree canopy is the layer of branches and leaves and stems that cover the ground when viewed from above. And this diagram this picture just shows the green patches of the tree canopy across the city. Next slide, please. In terms of the work that we did in 2019 to look at Kitchener's tree canopy, we know that we have 27% tree canopy across the city. If we look at a comparison with 6 other municipalities, 3 larger than Kitchener and 3 smaller, but all cities that have established canopy cover targets, we see that Kitchener is at the upper end with 27%. 2 cities have a little bit higher canopy cover at 28%, while a few are a little bit lower. So in that sense, Kitchener is doing quite well with its 27%. Next slide, please. Because we have very extensive tree canopy data across the city, we can look at the information in many different ways. And in terms of the city wards, again, we can see that the actual tree canopy cover varies significantly across the city. 5 of the wards have canopy cover greater than 27%, while the other 5 have less than 27%. But overall, all of the wards have good canopy cover. Next slide, please. One of the things that we were able to do, because we also looked at the canopy in 2014, was to look at the gains and losses of canopy cover. And this is an important factor to consider when you're looking at trying to maintain or enhance canopy cover. When we talk about gains, we're talking about increases due to the growth of existing trees, natural regeneration, along with tree planting. In terms of tree losses, we're looking at decreases due to tree mortality or the removal of living trees. The figure below just gives you a sense of, identifies that there's 5 factors that need to be considered when we talk about canopy change. So again, that's tree growth, natural regeneration, tree planting, tree mortality, and tree removal. And the key thing here is just to emphasize that there's a lot more to establishing and maintaining canopy cover than just planting the trees. And this is one of the reasons that we're also putting a bit of a focus on the 5 branches of a sustainable urban forest, which are to plan, engage, maintain, protect, and plant. Next slide, please. So across the city, with the information that we have, this graph shows how much the canopy cover has increased within each ward. The really good news here is that the fact that all of the wards saw some level of increase in their canopy cover. And this is particularly noteworthy considering the impacts of emerald ash borer and other factors over the last 4 years. While the average is 2.2% across the city, again, this graph just shows that there's a fair bit of variability across the ward for a number of factors. Next slide, please. In terms of looking forward, in terms of the next part of the work for this project, in terms of actually setting a canopy cover target, using the 6 cities that we've already looked at, we can look at some of the early adopters, the early cities that first adopted canopy cover targets tended to go with the 40% cover. Well, in more recent years, the latter adopters have often gone with less than 40%, but it shows that all of the cities have looked to strive to have some level of increase in their canopy cover. And this chart just shows a comparison of that target and the existing tree canopy of each of those cities. Next slide, please. So the last slide here is just a summary of the next steps that we are proposing to do. We're looking at coming back with more detailed information in February. This will be a technical background report, which will have a lot more information on the tree canopy for each ward and planning community. We'll also be looking at the factors that need to be considered to maintain or enhance the tree canopy cover. And a key part of this too is that when we start talking about increasing canopy cover, what kind of level of effort or time will be required to achieve such targets. This work will also include an engaged survey. And then the final piece of work we're proposing to come back in approximately May of 2021 to council, which would, at that point, we would be recommending a canopy cover target and the associated report. Next slide, please. That is the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see we have some questions. Up first, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Chair Schneider, and thanks, David, for your presentation. I guess my question would be, what is a realistic target for for us? I know we're going to go out and ask and everything, but what realistically is the target? Because we see Toronto at 40, and then we see the later adopters at 30%.
Well, I'll maybe take a first stab at that, Councillor Ioannidis, and through you, Chair Schneider. So we're still working on that. There's a significant difference between what a target should be and the amount of available green space. And so we have to balance that. The other thing we have to try and achieve is what's realistically achievable in various different wards. And as you saw through the picture, one of the presentations, one of the things that we've learned through this piece of work is the unique characteristics of each one of our wards. And so I think we want to take a look at what is the right target for various different wards and what is the right approach to take within each ward and propose that as a comprehensive strategy. So I think rather than trying to go out to the public and ask them, what do you think is the right number? I think we'll be engaging around what are some of the activities that you think we should be doing to enhance this. And then based on what we hear from that, staff will be proposing what we believe to be a realistic target and a realistic timelines through which we'd be able to achieve that.
Okay. And the tree canopy is only dealing with our lands, correct?
So through you, Chair Schneider, no, the tree canopy figures that you've seen today are tree canopy figures across the entire city. So they reflect the contribution of, yes, city lands and other public lands, such as school board, regional lands, and so on and so forth. But they also reflect the impact of private lands towards the tree canopy story. And so that will be another piece of that detailed technical report that you'll see at the early part of next year, which we'll be trying to tease out is how much is a contribution that the city can make towards improving this and how much is a contribution that we will be looking to the private side to work with us on.
Okay. Thank you, Niall, for that. When the time's appropriate, Chair Schneider, I'm ready to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Schneider. And my question is around what we can do to help our present tree canopy. Ward 8 has, I think it's, we're number 3 in terms of tree canopy coverage right now. And I think, Mr. Nobley, you're the person that I learned this from, that trees are really our only city infrastructure that get more valuable as they get older, unlike the rest of our infrastructure. Trees certainly mean a lot when I think the different neighborhoods throughout my ward of Westmount, Forest Hill, Maple Hill, the area around Lakeside Park. Trees really mean a lot to my residents, and one of the questions that I get from them is how can the city help them care better for the trees that are there? Many of them are aging and really need some TLC. Is that a consideration of this report?
So through you, Chair Schneider, yes, indeed. So it's not often we're able to put an item of infrastructure in at the city and say it's just hitting its useful life when it gets to 25, and we shouldn't be thinking about replacing it at that point in time. So yes, trees really start to add value to our urban forest canopy from 10 years onwards, really. Up until 10, they're a little bit young, but from 10 years onwards, they really start to add value. And through the Sustainable Urban Forest Strategy, we really did emphasize the fact that we're looking for mature canopy to really maximize the value that trees deliver to the city. And so, yes, I think we're looking at, as we saw through the presentation, different picture in different wards. And so I think one of the things that we're going to be looking at exploring as we bring back a recommendation in 2021 will be what are the measures that are most right to address the pressures that we see in various different wards across the city. So for some wards, it could well be to look at tree planting and enhancing the canopy through that. And in other wards, it could be that the focus is very much on working with private landowners in enhancing and maintaining trees on private property. So we've got a lot of data which will allow us to bring forward a range of different tools that can allow us to protect and enhance that canopy. But as Dave shared in his presentation, really, it's going to be a balance of the plan, engage, protect, and plant that we need to do to sustain our tree canopy and to help it grow as we go forward. I don't have the answers to all of the questions, but what I can tell you is there's no one tool which will fit the entire city as we start to look at what we need to do for our urban forest canopy.
Yes, thank you for that. Is this something that, as we plan the 2021 budget, that we should be looking at? Is there money that we should be putting into that maintenance category for these trees?
So through you, Chair Snyder, what I would say is that Council has made a comprehensive commitment through the strategic plan and supported by previous budgets to address the tree planting backlog, which was largely as a result of the impacts of emerald ash borer. And that's a body of work that we're continuing to do as guided by the strategic plan. And you'll see that reflected in the budget once again this year. I think what staff are proposing is that through the canopy work that we'll be bringing back next year, that would inform where and if additional or new resources are needed to help inform that canopy target. So at this point, I never want to say no to additional money, so I would welcome it. But at this particular point, I think it would be premature for us to identify what resources is needed and where it would be needed until we bring that report back in 2021.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's great to see this coming forward. As we know, trees are an important component of mitigating climate change in many ways. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. So on the recommendation, it refers to stakeholders, engagement and consultation with stakeholders and the community. So who are the stakeholders that will be engaged or consulted?
So there are a number of stakeholders, and through you, sorry, Chair Snyder, there are a number of stakeholders that we'll want to work with, and so they'll include people like REAP, who we've been working with on the tree planting program. They'll be working with committees like the Environment Committee, who have had a long-standing interest in this topic of discussion, and we'll probably also be looking to talk to other landholders such as the school boards and the region to understand what their input is. So the stakeholder list is yet to be fully fleshed out, but they're the sorts of stakeholders that we would be seeing beyond the general public. And really any group that would have an interest in trees would be more than willing to be one of those stakeholders that we'd be talking to.
I would hope you'd also engage with the developers and certainly in my ward where trees come down with great ease. My other question has to do with the sustainable development goals. I didn't write them all down, but I noticed 1 and 2, which were the first 2 on your list, were on that list. Can you maybe give us a bit more of an understanding of how a tree canopy is going to help poverty and zero hunger? And I didn't, like I said, I didn't get all of them written down, but.
So I may end up looking to Dave to add to this through you, Chair Schneider, but to get the ball rolling, it's been documented, well documented, and there's significant evidence to suggest that trees are part of an equitable society, and through trees, particularly in urban areas, you see many of the issues associated with some of the social inequities are helped through the presence of trees and the enrichment of neighborhoods through having trees. So it's perhaps not a direct line of sight between poverty and trees, but trees do add to quality of life and have quite often been cited to be part of addressing social equity issues within urban areas. Dave, I don't know if you've got more tangible direct links between those two SDGs and sustainable urban forest canopy you can refer to.
And if you can just remind us what the other SDGs that were mentioned were, please.
And I will leave that one to Dave as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, just in terms of the 9 goals that have been identified, I think it's important to keep in mind that these are set for across the world. So we're looking at a wide range of cities, and which may have a bit of a different makeup than ourselves. So that some of the things, such as further to what Niall said, but in terms of the no poverty and zero hunger, many cities do have very aggressive urban agriculture within their cities, which is part of that is the trees and that. So, and as Niall mentioned, we often find that tree canopy is the lowest in areas that are have less income, so that by improving the tree canopy in those areas, we know that we can directly improve the emotional and mental health of those people because of the studies that have been associated. In terms of the other goals, so the first one is no poverty, the second is zero hunger, the third is good health and well-being, the 6th is clean water and sanitation, 7 is affordable and clean energy, 8 is decent work and economic growth, 11 is sustainable cities and communities, 13 is climate action, and the final is life on land.
What number is that? Sorry.
Number 15 is life on land. And if you're interested, we could actually provide you the sheet that comes out of the document that provides more specific information to each of these goals in terms of urban forestry.
That'd be great. Thank you. Anyway, good work. I look forward to seeing a larger tree canopy over the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Gazzola, your turn.
Yeah, do we have a program that you use to tell us what our tree coverage is? I'm just curious as to the 2019 figures. Are they totally up to date and take into account everything that's been done with the tree that's died on us?
Through you, Chair Schneider, indeed they do. So one of the things that we've done is we undertake LiDAR mapping of the city. That's it's basically photographic mapping at a high resolution, which we undertook in 2014 to inform the past data, and we undertook it in 2019. So it's about as up to date as it's possible to be for these sorts of data. They're obviously, they go out of date the day the photo is taken, but there's a significant amount of work done to interpret the data that's collected and generate the figures, and we're bringing that to you just about as quickly as it's possible to do. So you can't get much more up to date than what we've shared with you today.
Do we know now that the ash tree is pretty much done?
So
have we taken those all? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
Councillor Gazzola, through you, Chair Schneider. Yes, the data that we've got addresses, I think we have taken down some ash trees since the flyover, the data would have been collected, but the significant bulk of the street tree ash removal work has been completed prior to this data being collected. So we're significantly through that on the street trees. Just to remind members of council, we haven't addressed ash in our woodlots. Mother Nature is addressing that for us, and again, we've seen significant mortality in that. And so these figures do capture fairly accurately largely covering most of the impact of emerald ash borer. There is still some impact that will not be reflected in these figures, but most of the impact of emerald ash borer will be accounted for in the figures you see.
Yeah, I want to just understand now, when you deal with the area that isn't covered, how do you deal with that? Like if you take a parking lot, is that could you actually include that for trees to be planted?
So through you, Chair Schneider, when we bring the full comprehensive report back, what you will see is a breakdown of the maximum available green space that could be planted. So across the city, through this information, we've not only been able to capture the amount of tree cover, canopy cover that we currently have, but we've also been able to capture the amount of potential available green space that could be canopy cover. So we would never be able to achieve 100% canopy cover because a large part of the city is asphalt or concrete or buildings and so on and so forth. And so 100% would never be a realistic target, but we will be able to tell you what the available green space is that could potentially be tree cover. Now, again, of that available tree space, some of it is going to be soccer pitches or baseball diamonds or other green space use that you wouldn't necessarily want to plant trees on. And again, we'd be able to tell you a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question. What do the specialists, like the people that are very knowledgeable about climate change, like what do trees help us with climate change, and in what way? Is it to produce oxygen or what have you? What is it? Who can help me? I'm just wondering what the specialists would say as to the ultimate number of trees you should have, or what should be a goal in order to help us with climate change.
So through you, Chair Schneider, that is an extremely complicated question. I'm afraid I don't have time to fully go through it. It depends largely on why you're planting trees. So there are different numbers that are touted out there in terms of whether you're trying to enhance biodiversity and create connected corridors of biodiversity, or whether you're trying to mitigate stormwater, or you're trying to create air filtration and so on and so forth. I think you will find nobody goes much higher than 40% as the sort of the upper limit, certainly from an urban forestry perspective. But there is no industry standard percentage that we should be aiming for that addresses it. Trees serve a massive a significant number of climate change associated mitigation adaptation benefits. But there is no magic number by which, if we have that, we are addressing climate change, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's good. That answers my question. I just wondered if there was, if the specialist had some kind of an answer, and you've answered that. So, just one final question, if you can, just out of curiosity. Your report states that with the 27% coverage, it's about 3,600 hectares of land space. Do we have any idea how many trees that would be?
So through you, Chair Schneider, and again, I might look to Dave. I believe that this is something that we are trying to take an approximate guess at through the detailed report that you'll see in spring. One of the other things is we will be trying to estimate how many trees would be needed over a certain amount of time to contribute 1% additional canopy cover, for example, to provide some sort of forecasting. But obviously that is, at best, it's going to be an estimate. But Dave, can you just confirm that will we be able to have in that detailed report a number of trees that we think we've got?
It's okay. Don't bother. I just wanted to know. It would be nice to know that X number of trees will give us X percentage of more canopy, and not that you can nail it down, but just to give us some idea as to where we're going. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Schneider, that one I am confident about. That one we will be able to give you an approximate idea of, if we plant X many trees in 20 years' time, they will create X amount of canopy. Again, it will be an estimate, but we are going to be able to provide that information, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Schneider. And a part of my question got answered as to, the available space with many other community partners like school boards and the region of Waterloo. But my question still lies on what level of consultation and early engagement are we doing on the onset, rather than waiting too far until the full policy is complete and endorsed by council? Is there consultation that's taking place in the interim process as well? The reason why I raise that is we really want them to be a collaborative partner rather than just a source of land where we can plant additional trees. So in that consideration of partnership, what type of discussions are we having, say, for example, with the Regional Waterloo, primarily, and the school boards, as they own the big parcels of lands throughout the city?
So through you, Chair Schneider, that's exactly what we'll be starting from here on, is starting that engagement and consultation process to understand what appetite and willingness there is to explore those partnerships on a go forward basis, and what available green space and what the tolerance or the appetite is of our community to see green spaces potentially change from their existing uses into contributing towards sustainable urban forestry. The second part of that conversation is through the engagement and consultation that we're going to be starting over coming months. We'll be looking to try and understand a little bit about members of the public's appetite for what their contribution could be to enhancing the sustainable urban forest canopy, and again, what sorts of supports and guidance they may need.
Are we, or will the plan be to, and I'm pinpointing on the region, to engage with them in consideration of how much they can partner, like how much willingness do they want to commit to reach a certain, I guess, canopy coverage for the city of Kitchener? What is their willingness to contribute to some of the costs? Will we ask that question?
Through you, Councillor Chair Schneider, I think the long answer is the short answer is yes, there's a conversation. The longer answer is I'm not sure that we would be at this stage going to them looking for financial support at this point, because we don't know what that level of financial support would be. I wouldn't say that conversation is off the table, but I don't think it's a conversation that we'll be having over coming months. Okay,
I appreciate that. As long as that conversation gets is tabled and left on the table for us to engage in whenever the time is right. So the last part of my question, Mr. Lobley, Councillor Chapman kind of raised, her concern of, how is the tree canopy work and strategy? How does it apply to, other social issues about homelessness, or more specifically regarding food and hunger? And I don't ask this question in jest. I'm really meaningfully curious in seeing what type of ability can the city of Kitchener take as part of this strategy to plant, edible forest through our park, neighborhood parks, and along our trails that can provide a sustainable source of food as well to any member of our society that wants to help themselves with.
So through you, Chair Schneider, they already contribute towards our existing existing urban forest canopy cover, and they would continue to be, and new additional edible forests could continue to contribute and grow our urban forest canopy. So that is something that can certainly contribute towards growing our urban forest and our urban forest canopy, and something that we could support through this process for sure.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is not that, yes, obviously it can contribute, but yes, through the strategy, the city of Kitchener will look at, further broadening that edible forest throughout our communities in Kitchener. I'm looking for is there a sense of commitment to this strategy?
So through you, Chair Schneider, at this point in time, I think it would be unwise of me to commit to a specific sort of tool like that. I think they can contribute, but I'm not sure whether the city would be taking the lead on that. It might be one of the things that we can bring back for discussion in spring as we come back to council and see where you'd like to focus the city's efforts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Schneider. Mr. Lobley, I am wondering if in the scope of this report that's coming in 2021, if you will include things like looking at a tree management plan that for developers to commit to even from before site plan. So what we've noticed over the last several years that there are some instances where a property owner will cut very mature, big trees before they are at the point of building permit. And so, and then sometimes those plans change, and then we're left without the trees that were there. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us if that would be possible to be included.
So through you, Chair Schneider, I think Councillor Marsh, you raise a very important point. And one of the risks that we face, our canopy has grown. Our canopy has grown in large part on reliance of trees which are already mature and have matured more and put on significant growth over recent years. And so, as Dave mentioned in his presentation, one of the key elements of the key branches, one of the 5 branches, is to protect what we already have. We've had some conversations, obviously, in council chambers already around what protection might look like. And I think that they are important conversations for us to continue to have with our development community and our planners to look to see what forms that protection should take. And there will definitely be further conversations and discussions around that. I think at this point, the plan and the conversation we will be bringing forward are some of the tools that we might have towards achieving a target. And some of the further work that will be required. I don't think it is realistic to think that we're going to be bringing forward a cure for protection in 6 months, but certainly we will be bringing forward the toolbox that we can explore and looking for council direction on which of the tools that we should be focusing on.
Well, I don't think that sounds unreasonable at all, just to bring us some more tools to potentially put in our toolbox once we have a chance to discuss them. We don't expect you to work any miracles, or not very many anyway, just a few, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. That appears to be all the questions, unless there are any further questions. And I don't see any. So it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? Okay, great. And that passes. That's all our discussion items. Just draw to your attention the information item on the winter maintenance of gravel parking lots and streets without sidewalks. And that concludes our meeting of Community and Infrastructure Services. So have a great day, all.
Thank you, and good job, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. See everyone.